Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is enjoying their day. Please subscribe and like the video before continuing. The Young and the Restless spoilers. Audra backed into a corner. Is fate pushing her toward Kyle? The Young and the Restless spoilers document that Audra Charles, Zuleyka Silver, is above her skis, personally and professionally. Get updates on the latest news about the Young and the Restless, straight to your inbox. We use your personal data for interest-based advertising, as outlined in our privacy notice. What is this? She has a good guy, but is secretly attempting to lure a man she loves more, while also talking about a new business after having lost her only financial backer. Nate Hastings, Sean Dominic, lost the brother he had just found. Damian Keynes, Jermaine Rivers, murder-wrecked Nate, and he deserves the full support of his loved ones, which he thinks includes Audra. Audra does care for Nate. But she's also taken his love for granted, with that most important noun, love, being repeatedly used in this introduction to reinforce Audra's inexperience with the topic. Audra Charles's immaturity is the issue. Passing herself off as someone with great business experience is an exaggeration. Audra's claim to supposed fame was being Tucker McCall's, Trevor St. John, top employee. As fans know, Tucker backed Audra from a young age. They discussed how he paid for her college degree and provided employment right out of college in exchange for her professional and personal services. What is this? Their transactional relationship was always tense, with both broken personalities not understanding a healthy relationship. They used each other and then broke badly, with Audra working as Victor Newman's, Eric Braden, mercenary to manipulate Tucker into relinquishing Glissade. Nate Hastings reformed himself. Nate's return to his birthplace in the recent past began with his continuing to practice medicine. But a series of events led to a physical altercation with Devin Winters, Bryden James, that left Nate without the use of his dominant surgical hand. Forcibly shifting from medicine to the business world proved difficult. Nate compensated for his lack of experience by projecting bravado and a connected lack of ethics. Nate's time at the family business didn't go well, and he was eventually forced to acknowledge his duplicity. Today, he's returned to being considerate of his family and friends and is ethical in business, all of which gave Audra a chance to elevate herself to his level. Kyle Abbott sees the worst in others. Kyle Abbott, Michael Mealer, has come to detest Audra as much as Victor, and that's important. The one-time business allies worked for Victor after Tucker left town, but quickly soured on each other. What is this? The physical attraction that Kyle and Audra shared was real. Audra went along with Kyle's surface-level connection, making him somewhat like a younger version of Tucker. In soapy reality, she wanted Kyle to fall for her, and he didn't. Mealer's character brings out the worst in Audra. Their shared stubborn nature is a key reason why they won't turn away from the renewed fight they're in. Nate rightly suspects Audra isn't being honest about her dealings with Victor or her interest in Kyle and is bound to learn the truth. Kyle's relationship with Claire is in danger, and if it fails, he'll be outraged. It wouldn't be surprising to see Kyle's and Audra's relationships break, blame each other for those outcomes, and then become a couple in the heat of that next battle. This site is a leading source for everything linked to the Young and the Restless. Check back regularly for Y&R spoilers and news. Y&R Audra Charles's immaturity is the issue. When it comes to the Young and the Restless, characters are constantly shifting, evolving, and redefining themselves in the cutthroat world of Genoa City. Audra Charles is one of those characters who has captivated audiences with her ambitious streak, her boldness, and her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage. However, in recent storylines, a recurring theme has begun to emerge, and it has fans talking. Audra's immaturity may be her biggest downfall. Despite her intelligence and determination, Audra continues to make choices that reveal her lack of foresight, emotional control, and stability, all of which could ultimately cost her both professionally and personally. Her immaturity is not simply about youth or lack of experience, it's about the way she handles conflict, power, relationships, and responsibility. And as her schemes unravel, the cracks in her foundation are becoming more and more visible. Audra entered Genoa City with a level of confidence that was nearly intoxicating. She knew how to talk her way into boardrooms, seduce powerful allies, and convince others that she was indispensable. At first, her ruthless ambition looked like a sign of strength. After all, Genoa City has long been home to sharks like Victor Newman, Jack Abbott, and Phyllis Summers. But unlike those titans of manipulation, Audra lacks a critical skill, the ability to think long-term. Her immaturity shines through in the way she prioritizes quick wins over sustainable strategies. She wants validation immediately, she wants recognition instantly, and she wants results without truly considering the long-term impact. This has made her a ticking time bomb in the world of business and relationships alike. Take her dealings with Tucker McCall as an example. On paper, Audra and Tucker should have been a formidable duo. Both are cunning, resourceful, and willing to push the envelope to get what they want. But where Tucker balances risk with patience, Audra often reveals her impatience. Instead of carefully laying groundwork for success, she tends to push too aggressively, rushing plans and tipping her hand too soon. Her immaturity lies in her inability to recognize when subtlety is required. Tucker has shown time and again that he understands the power of restraint, while Audra often misinterprets restraint as weakness. This misguided thinking exposes her lack of true experience in the high-stakes world she so desperately wants to conquer. Her relationships with men further highlight her immaturity. While she's undeniably charismatic and alluring, Audra often blurs the line between personal desires and professional advantage. This is not uncommon in Genoa City, where romance and business frequently intertwine, but Audra's problem is that she doesn't know how to separate the two. She plays with emotions as if they're pieces on a chessboard, but when the game turns against her, she seems surprised and unprepared. Her fling with Kyle Abbott, for instance, was a prime example of her short-sightedness. Kyle may have provided her with access and influence for a time, but Audra never considered the emotional consequences of inserting herself between Kyle and Summer. The fallout damaged her credibility in the eyes of others, painting her not as a clever strategist but as a reckless interloper. This is where her immaturity undermines her. She craves validation in the moment, but fails to see the reputational damage left in her wake. In the business arena, Audra wants to be seen as the next power player in Genoa City, but she doesn't quite understand that respect is earned over time, not seized overnight. She often overestimates her leverage, speaking with an arrogance that alienates potential allies. For someone so desperate to climb the corporate ladder, Audra does not grasp the importance of loyalty and trust. People like Victor Newman and Jack Abbott have thrived because, while they may manipulate, they also command loyalty and build empires on alliances. Audra, on the other hand, treats alliances as disposable. This is not only immature, it's dangerous. Without a stable foundation, her empire is built on sand, and eventually, the tide will come in to wash it away. Even her relationship with Nikki Newman has shown cracks in Audra's maturity level. Nikki initially saw potential in Audra, giving her a chance to prove herself in business. But Audra's tendency to act impulsively, to chase ambition without discipline, and to prioritize personal gratification over long-term goals has strained their dynamic. Nikki has been in the game far too long to fall for tricks, and she sees the immaturity that Audra tries to disguise behind a confident facade. Instead of learning from Nikki, Audra often dismisses her wisdom, which only further reveals her lack of growth. Immaturity is not about being young, it's about refusing to learn from the experiences of others, and Audra embodies this refusal all too often. Another glaring issue is how Audra handles conflict. Instead of approaching problems with diplomacy, she often escalates them. When confronted, her instinct is not to de-escalate or negotiate, but to retaliate and double down. This hot-headed approach might make for good television drama, but in the world of Genoa City power plays, it's a recipe for self-destruction. Immaturity is not just about making mistakes, it's about repeating them because you refuse to reflect. Audra seems to thrive on chaos, almost addicted to the thrill of confrontation. But in the end, her inability to manage conflict with grace or strategy highlights her greatest weakness. It's also worth noting how Audra perceives herself versus how others perceive her. In her mind, she's a woman destined to sit at the top of the corporate food chain. She believes she's on par with legends like Victor and Victoria Newman. But in reality, many around her see her as reckless, inexperienced, and dangerous to trust. This disconnect is a hallmark of immaturity, believing you're already a master when you're still very much a novice. Until Audra realizes how others view her, she will continue to sabotage herself. And yet, for all of her flaws, Audra Charles remains one of the most compelling characters on Y&R. Her immaturity makes her unpredictable, and unpredictability drives storylines forward. Fans love to debate whether she'll eventually evolve into a powerhouse player, or whether her own flaws will consume her. Genoa City is a place where characters either learn, grow, and rise, or burn out spectacularly. Right now, Audra stands at a crossroads. If she learns to temper her ambition with patience, wisdom, and respect for others, she could become a formidable figure in the future of Y&R. But if she continues down her current path, her immaturity will ensure that she crashes and burns in spectacular fashion. Audra Charles's immaturity isn't just a flaw, it's the defining obstacle that could determine her fate in Genoa City. Her brilliance, ambition, and charm are undeniable, but until she learns to pair those qualities with maturity, restraint, and long-term vision, she will always remain her own worst enemy. And as fans watch her unravel, the question remains, will Audra grow up in time to save herself, or will she let her immaturity be the issue that brings her down? Nate Hastings reformed himself. Y&R. Nate Hastings has always been a fascinating character on The Young and the Restless, carrying with him the dual weight of his family's legacy and his own personal ambitions. Over the years, fans have watched Nate navigate his role as a doctor, as a romantic partner, as a family man, and as someone with an unshakable desire to prove himself in Genoa City. But in more recent storylines, Nate has shifted once again, evolving from a man whose ambition once threatened to consume him into someone who appears to have reformed himself. It's a transformation that has left many viewers questioning whether Nate's reform is genuine or if it's merely another strategic reinvention designed to keep him in the game. Either way, the fact remains, Nate Hastings has changed, and his redemption arc is becoming one of the most compelling stories unfolding on Y&R. Nate's ambition was never inherently a problem. In fact, ambition has been a defining trait of many great Genoa City power players. Victor Newman, Jack Abbott, Victoria Newman, and even Devon Hamilton have all channeled ambition into greatness. But what set Nate apart was the way his ambition became entangled with betrayal. He turned against Devon and Chancellor Winters, aligning himself with Victoria in a way that left his family stunned and fans divided. For a man who had long been respected as a healer, a doctor sworn to do no harm, his pivot to ruthless business schemer was jarring. It showed a darker side to Nate, one that was willing to abandon loyalty in pursuit of success. That period of his life cemented him as someone capable of cold, calculated moves, and for many viewers, it seemed as though Nate had crossed a line from which he could never return. But soap operas are about evolution, and Nate's reformation has slowly taken shape. He has begun to see the consequences of his actions, not just on his career, but on his relationships. His bond with Devon was fractured, and regaining that trust required deep reflection. His relationship with Elena crumbled under the weight of lies and betrayal, leaving him to face the fallout of his own selfish decisions. Even his dynamic with Victoria, which began as a thrilling romance and business alliance, fell apart when it became clear that Nate's loyalties were never fully secure. These losses forced Nate to confront the person he had become, and for the first time in a long time, he seemed to realize that power without trust is meaningless. Reformation for Nate has not been about a single act of redemption, but rather a series of small choices that reflect growth. For example, his decision to take accountability for his missteps instead of shifting blame showed fans a side of Nate that had long been missing. He has acknowledged the pain he caused Devon and others, and though forgiveness has not come easily, his willingness to admit fault is a massive step toward healing. This humility is a far cry from the arrogance that once defined him. By stepping back and allowing himself to be vulnerable, Nate has shown that he is no longer the man who believes he can conquer Genoa City through manipulation alone. In many ways, Nate's reformation is a return to his roots. He was introduced to viewers as a doctor, a man dedicated to saving lives, helping people, and carrying on the legacy of the Hastings and Barber families. His shift into the corporate world almost erased that identity, replacing it with a hardened, ambitious executive who prioritized personal gain. Now, as he reflects on who he truly is, Nate is beginning to balance his ambition with compassion. This balance is critical, because without it, Nate risks becoming just another ruthless figure in a city already filled with them. His reformation suggests that he doesn't want to be just another Victor Newman wannabe, he wants to carve out his own path. Family has played a major role in Nate's evolution. The Hastings and Barber legacy is one built on resilience, intelligence, and dignity. For a time, Nate seemed to stray from that legacy, making choices that disappointed those who loved him most. But his renewed efforts to reconnect with family, to be someone they can trust again, mark a turning point. His interactions with Devon in particular symbolize his reformation. While the wounds of betrayal do not heal overnight, Nate's consistent efforts to prove his loyalty suggest that he is sincere about repairing the bond. The dynamic between Nate and Devon has shifted from rivalry to something more nuanced, with the potential for forgiveness and perhaps even collaboration in the future. This gradual repair work is evidence that Nate is choosing maturity over ego. Romantically, Nate's reformation is equally intriguing. His entanglements with Elena and Victoria painted him as a man who blurred the lines between passion and strategy. Now, he seems to be moving away from using relationships as leverage, instead prioritizing honesty and respect. This shift is critical not only for his personal life but for how fans perceive him. A reformed Nate can be a romantic lead again, one who is capable of genuine love rather than calculated affairs. Whether he finds new romance or rekindles an old flame, his growth means he can approach relationships with a healthier, more authentic perspective. Nate's reformation also impacts his professional trajectory. Genoa City thrives on corporate battles, and Nate will inevitably find himself in the thick of them again. The question is whether he will return to old patterns of manipulation or if he will stand firm in his new values. If he can prove that integrity and ambition can coexist, Nate could redefine what it means to succeed in business. Instead of betraying allies, he could become the rare leader who thrives through honesty. That kind of transformation would not only elevate Nate but also set him apart from others in the cutthroat world of Newman Enterprises and Chancellor Winters. Of course, fans are always skeptical of redemption arcs. In soaps, reformation often lasts only until the next big temptation comes along. Will Nate truly stay on this new path, or will ambition lure him back into old habits? The beauty of his storyline lies in that uncertainty. His reformation feels authentic now, but the writers could easily test him with opportunities that challenge his newfound values. If Nate resists, he will solidify himself as a reformed man. If he gives in, he will confirm what many already suspect, that reformation in Genoa City is always temporary. What makes Nate's journey so compelling is that it reflects real human struggles. Everyone makes mistakes, and everyone faces crossroads where they must decide whether to continue destructive patterns or reform themselves. Nate's choice to reform resonates with fans because it mirrors the universal desire for second chances. His willingness to face his flaws, admit his mistakes, and try to be better speaks to the heart of what redemption stories are all about. Whether fans forgive him or not, his arc demonstrates that people are capable of change, even in the soap world, where betrayal and scandal are the norm. Nate Hastings has indeed reformed himself, at least for now. He has learned that ambition without integrity is empty, that relationships built on lies crumble, and that family trust is worth more than corporate power. His journey is far from over, but his current path suggests that he is no longer the man who once betrayed those closest to him. Instead, he is striving to be a better. Kyle Abbott sees the worst in others. Y&R. When it comes to family dynasties on The Young and the Restless, few names carry as much weight as Abbott. The family has long been defined by loyalty, resilience, and an unshakable bond to Jabot Cosmetics. Yet, within this powerful clan, Kyle Abbott has emerged as one of the most complex and emotionally charged figures of his generation. While Jack Abbott often champions optimism and sees the best in people, even when they don't deserve it, Kyle, on the other hand, has developed a much darker lens. He sees the worst in others, and this outlook has colored nearly every decision he makes. His inability to trust, his tendency to assume the worst motives, and his readiness to anticipate betrayal reveal not only who Kyle is as a character but also why his life remains perpetually tangled in turmoil. Kyle's cynicism didn't appear out of nowhere. He grew up in a world where family loyalty was constantly tested, where corporate rivalries turned personal, and where betrayal often came from those closest to you. As the son of Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins, Kyle inherited a complicated legacy. Diane's return from the dead and her ongoing manipulations have played a major role in shaping Kyle's worldview. For much of his life, he has been forced to question her motives, torn between wanting to trust his mother and fearing that she'll betray him again. This fractured maternal relationship has taught Kyle to expect the worst in people, especially in those who claim to love him. Instead of seeing love as unconditional, he views it as a transaction, one that could be revoked at any moment. His romantic relationships further illustrate this flaw. Kyle's marriage to Summer Newman should have been a fairy tale, the uniting of two powerful Genoa City families through true love. But Kyle's insecurities and his tendency to project the worst motives onto others constantly eroded the foundation of their relationship. When Summer struggled with honesty, Kyle assumed betrayal rather than misunderstanding. When challenges arose, he was quicker to believe she might abandon him than to believe in their love. His entanglement with Audra Charles only reinforced this destructive pattern, as his suspicion of Summer pushed him toward another woman. Kyle's inability to see the best in his partner led him to sabotage his own marriage, a tragic example of how seeing the worst in others becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Professionally, Kyle's perspective is just as damaging. At Jabot, he has struggled to balance his desire for leadership with his deep distrust of nearly everyone around him. Instead of seeing colleagues as allies, he often interprets their actions through a lens of rivalry and betrayal. This suspicion has fueled conflicts with Billy Abbott, Ashley Abbott, and even his father, Jack. Rather than assuming the best intentions, Kyle prepares for the worst, which causes unnecessary tension and paranoia. For a company like Jabot, which thrives on unity against outside threats, Kyle's outlook often weakens the Abbott front from within. In this sense, Kyle's worldview is not just a personal flaw, it's a professional liability. Kyle's relationship with his father is perhaps the most heartbreaking example of how he sees the worst in others. Jack has repeatedly shown Kyle patience, understanding, and forgiveness, even when Kyle has made reckless choices. Yet Kyle often questions Jack's motives, suspecting manipulation or favoritism rather than recognizing his father's genuine love. This suspicion reveals the emotional scar tissue that Kyle carries. In a city where betrayal is commonplace, Kyle struggles to believe that anyone can truly act selflessly. Jack may see hope, but Kyle prepares for disappointment. This pessimistic mindset not only strains their father-son bond but also threatens to alienate Kyle from the one person who has always fought for him. Even as a father himself, Kyle struggles with this mindset. His relationship with Harrison, his young son, is filled with love, but Kyle's tendency to assume the worst in others often seeps into his parenting. He is constantly on edge, fearful that others, whether Tara Locke, Audra Charles, or anyone else, will harm or manipulate Harrison. While his protective instincts are natural, his paranoia can create unnecessary conflict, as he projects his distrust onto situations where it may not be warranted. If Kyle cannot learn to see the best in people, even for Harrison's sake, he risks raising his son in an environment filled with suspicion rather than trust. What makes Kyle's flaw so compelling is that it isn't just a dramatic plot device, it's deeply rooted in psychology. People who grow up in unstable environments often learn to anticipate betrayal as a survival mechanism. Kyle's life has been filled with instability, from Diane's manipulations to the constant upheavals at Jabot. As a result, seeing the worst in others has become his way of protecting himself. If he expects betrayal, he cannot be blindsided by it. The problem is that this mindset prevents him from fully experiencing love, trust, and connection. By bracing for the worst, he never allows himself to enjoy the best. Fans of Y&R are divided when it comes to Kyle. Some see him as a tragic figure, someone scarred by his past and struggling to break free from the cycle of distrust. Others view him as his own worst enemy, pointing out that his cynicism often leads him to make the very mistakes he fears others will commit. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Kyle is both a victim of his circumstances and the architect of his own downfall. His flaw of seeing the worst in others is understandable, but it is also preventable, if only he can recognize it and choose to change. The question now is whether Kyle can reform himself. Will he continue to sabotage his own happiness by assuming betrayal at every turn, or will he learn to see the best in people, even when it feels risky? His future with Summer may depend on it. His place at Jabot certainly does. And his relationship with Harrison will be shaped by whether he can break the cycle of distrust that has defined his life. For Kyle Abbott, the stakes couldn't be higher. Kyle Abbott sees the worst in others, and until he learns to shift his perspective, he will remain trapped in a cycle of suspicion, conflict, and heartache. But if he can take a page from his father's book, choosing to see hope instead of betrayal, Kyle could redefine his legacy within the Abbott family and within Genoa City itself. His flaw may be his greatest obstacle, but overcoming it could also be his greatest triumph.